Spay then starts trying to yell at their boss that he doesn't deserve to know. No, he doesn't. Hello, my wonderful cultists, and to all those not yet initiated. Back again with another RPG horror story for you all. But first, a small announcement. We now have a subreddit all our own. Hooray! So, if you have an RPG horror story you'd like read on the channel, feel free to follow the link in the description and post it there. You can also post your fan art for me to display here on my videos. And speaking of fan art, we have some to show off today, but I'll save that for after the stories. Now that I've had a bit of a break and my creative juices are flowing again, I figured we'd jump back in with two stories fitting my theme, cults and cosmic horror. Though the subjects of today's tales are more eye-rolling than horrible. So, let's get into it, shall we? The first story is by Reddit user Lady Callista. That guy brings a fearless badass to an Eldritch Horror campaign and dies. I was jamming a one-shot of Delta Green, an amazing system I've only recently picked up that reminds me a lot of something like Call of Cthulhu, if it was all a US government program. The TLDR of the system is modern-day Eldritch shenanigans all tied together by a very secret agency known as Delta Green that tries to keep supernatural happenings away from the public eye. That sounds pretty awesome, actually. Q Blacksat, a pre-written one-shot that's part of the larger Control Group narrative. In Blacksat, the players are 5 NASA astronauts that are supposed to escort 2 NPCs up into space to fix a mysterious satellite. Cut to our players. Each of the astronauts has a last name already provided in the adventure, so I'll identify the players by which astronaut they were playing. Macmillan is the pilot, Hamlet and Belton are mission specialists, Turner is the doctor, and Spay, our very own that guy, is the commander. I didn't have any friends who play Delta Green, so I had to recruit some randoms from my local game store and advertised I'd be willing to teach the system since I have all the materials. I'm used to doing this, and I tend to like the people I find, including this game even, as 4 out of 5 of our players were pretty neat and into the horror vibe. Our last player, however, our Spay, didn't seem to get what the system was about. When I listed out each character and role, he jumped at the idea of playing the commander. The first red flag, I guess, but nobody minded at the time, giving him the role easily. The first real sign of trouble was that he kept trying to insert himself into situations he just was not in. Before the takeoff, the party has 2 days to do a few things. Talk to each other, talk to the mission control and their commanders, or talk to the 2 NPCs they're trying to train for the flight and escort. At one point during this 2-day span, Turner, the doctor, needs to give both of the NPCs a physical. I mentioned that one of the NPCs has weird scarring down his left side. Spay immediately cuts in and tries to ask the NPC a question. I inform him he's not there, just Turner, Weintraub, and O'Neill, the 2 NPCs. So he then tries to say that he just enters the room so he can ask about the scarring. I tell him he's not allowed to do that. Dr. Turner is giving a physical, and he's got his own job to do. He doesn't even know this is happening right now. He tries to argue that since he's the commander, he's in charge of everything, and we all have to try to explain to him that he's the mission commander. He's not, like, in charge of NASA. Hamlet and Belton are later trying to train the 2 NPCs in a swimming pool to use their spacewalk gear. Spay attempts to interrupt again. Same story as before.
I ask.
You're not here.
I enter.
You can't. I hurry the scene along. Weintraub vomits everywhere. Our Belton is mean to him. Spay attempts to reprimand him, and we again have to remind him that he is not there. We finally get to the part where Spay and Macmillan have free time to chat up their bosses or coworkers. Spade doesn't have anything he wants to say. This kinda surprised me because he was relentlessly trying to butt into every conversation beforehand. But when it's actually his turn, nothing. Oh dear. It sounds like Spade is one of those spotlight hogs. I'm sure you've all encountered, or at least heard of one of these types of people. The types that can't think of anything creative on their own, but still want to be the center of attention. So they try to leech off the spotlight of others or try to tell them what their characters should be doing. Then, of course, when Macmillan decides he wants to talk to their boss, Spade tags along. Macmillan asks a question to their boss, but he fails the role and the commander doesn't spill any classified information. Spade then starts trying to yell at their boss that he deserves to know what's going on, and that keeping information secret from him is unfair. All members of the party are highly experienced NASA employees who have no doubt worked on dozens of classified projects and are probably told, "You can't know that, that's classified," on a daily basis. But I guess Spade didn't get the memo or something. I have to tell him not to yell at his boss out of character because I don't want the one-shot being derailed by the mission commander disappearing because he decided he wanted to break US government secrecy. There have been hints of horror before this. The nature of Black Sat is strange, and supposedly Weintraub and O'Neill are the only two scientists who can fix it. They fail their physicals and shouldn't be let into space, but NASA doesn't have anyone else that's qualified. O'Neill is tight-lipped about the project, but Weintraub will blab if given the opportunity, and goes on a bit of a tangent about hypergeometry and other concepts that even these NASA scientists don't understand. Spey is a well-educated character with a background in mathematics and physics, so he asks if he knows what hypergeometry is. I tell him he can roll for it. There's no way for the characters to know what it is beforehand, but I did have a plan for a few different roll outcomes. He rolled highly, so I told him that he recognizes a word here and there, and that the things that Weintraub is talking about seem like they're adjacent to theoretical physics and the study of time and dark matter, but that even Spey doesn't really understand. The intended reaction was for him to think,
"My character doesn't know this, and my character knows a lot, so this stuff must be really weird."
But instead, he thinks I'm just trying to cheat him and hide information that he should know, and demands to know why Spey doesn't know what Weintraub is talking about. I reiterate what he was told in character. Weintraub and O'Neill are the only two people that know how this thing works. Its principles sound alien to anyone else. When we get to the actual launch, everyone's strapped in and ready to go. As the rocket begins launching, Dr. Turner's fears about the physical health of the two scientists become realized. The radio starts to cut out as Weintraub begins vomiting in his suit and the capillaries in his eyes explode. It's a really gnarly scene. Of course, when I prompt Turner if she would like to get up and help Weintraub or follow protocol, which is to wait until they're in orbit to leave your seat, even in the case of injury, Spey wants to get up and go to him. I tell him he can't. He's in the front of the rocket and Weintraub is in the back. He can't even see him and his radio's been cut. Not to mention he's not a doctor. Even if he made it over there, he couldn't do anything. Spey argues he could
"Save him because he's a scientist."
and I don't know what the hell he was even trying to imply there, but I reiterate that he doesn't know Weintraub is struggling and that it's Turner's problem. Skipping forward just a bit, Weintraub dies, and it's supposed to cost the players 1 sanity when they realize it. Spey argues that the death of this scientist wouldn't faze him. He's
"Seen death before,"
he claims. I tell him that he has not seen someone violently puke themselves to death as their blood vessels explode, and that this would shake anybody. But he just won't accept that he is missing that 1 sanity point. I just get tired of arguing with him and let him keep his single sanity point. More stuff happens. Hamlet and Belton are escorting O'Neill in a spacewalk to the satellite that they now know O'Neill is not trying to fix, but destroy. However, due to the technology within the reactor, a human consciousness must be sacrificed to destroy it. Mission Control activates a kill switch in Hamlet's suit, and he dies. This is also supposed to cost the astronaut's sanity. Can you imagine what Spay says about that? Oh boy, here we go. We argue for another 15 minutes that he loses sanity when his squad mate, who he has known for a long time, is executed by NASA Mission Control right in front of him. I tell him that he loses it and there's nothing he can do about it. Then there are these things called derivatives. They're like sentient folds of time and space. They're very weird, and one lands on the nose cone of the ship. But it's basically impossible to see because it doesn't really have mass. It's just like a consciousness of energy that exists in space. It then goes from the nose cone of the ship to inside the hull. Spay wants to fucking fight it. Fight what, dude? The fold in space-time in the hull of your ship? How are you going to fight it? Enlighten me. You don't even have any weapons. Even if you did, the only thing that can destroy these things is the gravity of a planet or magic. You don't know this, of course, but the last reaction an astronaut should be having to some strange anomaly of space is to try to fucking shoot it. I warn him off. He attempts hand-to-hand combat with something that doesn't exist, and he dies from touching it because that's how these things work. He complains that I sent them
An overpowered monster.
and refuses to accept that derivatives are literally impossible to touch or hit because they don't technically exist. I don't even remember what killed him first. The touch of the derivative melting his body, or the feeding effect disintegrating his mind. But he was killed on the spot by the thing. He starts to make a scene in the game shop, but everyone just asks him to leave, basically. Even the staff tell him that he should probably step away from the table and find something else to do. Just got on my nerves, really. And I don't blame you, OP. It seems like this player just couldn't grok a different system or a way of playing other than kill all the things. Probably one of those that would be your typical murder hobo in other systems. In keeping with the theme of bad decisions, this next story by Reddit user AgreeableAd1221 is a bit of a groaner. Though, interestingly, it also shows what can happen when the other players aren't aware of what's going on. Don't split the party in creepy cult town. So, not a complete horror story, but one where players acted so utterly foolishly and ignored basic safety. This happened during a Pathfinder 2nd Edition adaptation of the Feast of Ravenmoor game, also modified for first level. The hook of Ravenmoor is so. Players are asked by a friend to investigate a missing tax collector in a remote podunk town and collect the money from him. Our cast: the Game Master, me, Tiefling Bard, Tiefling Bard, Tiefling Rogue, Orc Magus, a first-time player, Human Sorcerer, and an Elf Swashbuckler. Our PCs arrive in this town, and I immediately start to make things weird. The corn they grow form impenetrable walls. They keep sturges, giant mosquito things, as pets. Although they claim to worship Desna, their rites are all wrong. The church was desecrated, and the townspeople are suspicious and hostile. Everything starts well with the PCs not going murder hobo, and safely returning one of the pet sturges that escaped, earning the friendship of a father and son. They meet the mayor and learn from him that the tax collector was corrupt and fled with the money to another city. They even find his journal, which seems to corroborate this. He is, in actuality, dead and buried under the abandoned house. Still, the mayor invites them to stay for the town festival that night, and lets them lodge at his place. The players decide to investigate and split up. Most go around the shops to meet the locals. The bard, being a follower of Desna, gets into an argument seeing the ruined church. Good stuff so far. Then comes the magus, who, for unknown reasons, keeps looking around town for crafting materials to take. they spot a creepy, overgrown, abandoned house. The kid from earlier warns them that spooky stuff and hauntings happen there. They disregard this and proceed to go to the abandoned house, which, unbeknownst to them, is a cult hideout. They axe their way past the boarded-up entrance and find a human-sized cage. Then they hear a noise in the back room. The Magus proceeds to investigate the strange noise and gets ambushed by the cult. Outnumbered, they try to fight for one round before deciding to run, but is knocked unconscious before they can escape. That's player 1 knocked out. In the Magus' defense, it was their first time playing a TTRPG. And also in their defense, they did try to run. The rest of the party proceeds and eventually the festival starts. They notice the Magus is gone and decide to give them until dinner to come back before searching for them. Sensible plan? ? The mayor even offers to help. The tieflings both go enjoy the festival, and less than a minute later the swashbuckler tells the sorcerer they will go to look for the Magus and ask them to come with. Ah, the buddy system. Excellent. Always have your buddy. So now the party is split into 3. 2 at the festival, 1 missing, and 2 searching around town. The swashbuckler and sorcerer look around, and finding the creepy place decide to split up again. Well, that didn't last long. So now there is a sorcerer all by herself and a swashbuckler just checking around the creepy cornfields, where the cultists are hiding. Naturally, they get ambushed 3-1. For some reason, seeing these odds, they both decide to charge in alone, instead of attempting to regroup or flee. This being an encounter for a whole team, these cultists are wimps, but it's still 3-1 against squishy characters and no support. So now there are 3 unconscious characters. These 2, they've played multiple games before. Meanwhile, the tieflings are having a lot of fun role-playing and don't know what's happened to the others. All this was in secret chats. This line right here was where I had to stop reading and rethink the entire story. I had initially thought these players were either idiots or just trying their best to not metagame at all. But if all these things separate from the other players were done in secret chats, then there's no way the others would be able to make out-of-character decisions based on what was going on. I kind of feel like if these things hadn't been in secret chats, that this session wouldn't have been quite so much of a shit show. Still, there's just a certain amount of constructive paranoia that these players seem to lack when in a town of not quite right and creepy things going on. Though, that might just be me. Shadowrun does shit to you, man. The kid from earlier tells the tieflings that he saw the other 2 leave the festival, and they decide they have to check for them, first checking in the mayor's house. When they get there, they see someone inside their bedroom, but it appears to be a mannequin. Creepy? They spot the cultists coming into the house, and are now 2-6. Rather than rush in, they instead use their massive stealth and acrobatics to escape their attackers. They find the father of the kid who fills them in about the cult, what little he knows anyway, and decide they have to rescue their downed party member. Now, the human-sized cage where the knocked-out PCs are is right at the entrance of the cult's hideout. Again, they manage to avoid patrols, get in, and free the Magus and Sorcerer. Problem is, the swashbuckler is nowhere to be found, having drawn the short straw and is being prepared to be sacrificed, like the tax collector. The tieflings, being not the most altruistic of characters, and seeing their odds, just decide to GTFO and live rather than try to keep fighting. They again manage to sneak through, find the friendly NPCs and convince them to run away with the group. And so, 2/3 of the module remains uncompleted, and several plot hooks unfired, because the players decided to run blindly into danger. The swashbuckler gets sacrificed and dies, the player unhappy he lost his character, which he feels is unfair. TLDR. Players go to a creepy place and decide to split the party 4 times, get into ambushes and try to fight through rather than running, causing the plot to go foobar and one of them to die. I don't think the plot going foobar was because of... Okay, maybe I'm just missing something here, but the TLDR doesn't seem like an accurate summary to me. Having secret scenes for those that split off from the party can certainly work, but the GM has to be able to roll with and make concessions for the other players acting without the out-of-character knowledge of what happened. A fair number of gamers tend to think along similar lines when it comes to problem solving, and so will most likely do similar things to the other party members. Sure, knowing what happened and acting based on it is technically metagaming, but most of the time is useful or helpful metagaming. It prevents something like this from happening, since the other players are able to decide on a different course of action that is still keeping with their character and character's knowledge, or in this case, lack thereof. For the most part, players don't actually want to derail a campaign, and so will work with the GM in order to keep it going, but they have to have a certain amount of knowledge in order to do something like that. On the other hand, we have the tiefling pair who just skedaddled when they realized things had gotten tough. I'm sure it would have been an interesting and pretty awesome scene if what was left of the group fought or snuck their way through the ritual to save their friend, so I'm not entirely sure what happened there. Now, it could be that they just didn't want to deal with it and decided to be jerks, leaving the other one to die, but it also could have been that they felt that they were being punished for not knowing what had happened to the other PCs beforehand. Maybe they weren't used to not hearing about the goings-on of separated party members, and so decided they just wanted to get the session over with. I know I'd be pretty frustrated if I learned things were going on behind my back, so to speak, as a player, resulting in a nasty surprise, or learning that what I was trying to do was precisely what another player had already tried. I don't think it was purely the players or GM's fault that this went sideways, but a bit of both. Like I said, I think the secret scenes could actually work, and actually be super cool if handled the right way. What do you guys think? Do you have any theories about what happened here? Have you ever had something like this happen to you from either side? Let me know down in the comments. And now it is time for some fan art. This fan art was submitted to my Discord by the Forsaken Guard and portrays me and my library with one of my many magical tomes. Alright, finished another one. Now it's time to... And now it's talking to me. Oh well, guess I gotta put this one in chains too. Thank you so much for this lovely art, Forsaken Guard. Fan art is one of my absolute favorite things, and makes me incredibly happy anytime someone is inspired to spend the time to make it. If you have fan art that you would like displayed on one of my videos, you can send it to me through the email in my About section, post it to my Discord in Hannah Fan Art, or post it on my brand new subreddit. For now though, it is time to say goodnight. As always, likes, comments, and new subscribers, as well as sharing the video with your friends, really helps my channel grow, and keeps the algorithm shoggoth from eating me. Until next time, my lovely cultists, when the stars align. A pre-written one-shot that's part of the larger control... So I'll identify... When I listed out each character trying to train the two NPCs in a swimming pool to use their spake walk. Spay then tries... and is executed... or the feeding effect players are the corn they grow form impenetrable oh my god, impenetrable, there we go. And then and finding the Bop, bop, bop.